Well, hello and welcome to another Zend webinar. What we're going to be looking at today is how you can actually implement JavaScript debugging in your application. Now, one of the things you might be used to working with is having some kind of a browser running outside of your IDE, so Firefox, IE, whatever it is, depending on what you're doing in your organization, what you're using. Though when you actually look at how a lot of integrated tools work, you generally tend to see those working inside of the IDE. But what we're doing here is actually starting to move our development into the IDE using internal tools as opposed to external tools. For myself, this is actually a pretty big change. I'm used to working in Firefox, or well, usually Firefox, and then kind of testing in other browsers, but doing it external. What I'm going to be doing here is showing you how to do it internally in your browser, which is again probably going to be a little bit of a change that you're not necessarily used to, but I think that this change is actually a good thing, particularly if you're trying to build rich internet applications using JavaScript. So the first thing that we need to do in order to get that, there's a whole bunch of debug information that's really useful to developers, but we need to actually make that available to the IDE. And the way we do that is by using the internal browser. The internal browser is based off of Firefox, and what we need to do is basically trigger it. There's not an easy way, or I shouldn't say that there's not an easy way. There's not just a regular browser that's available. So what we need to do is we need to set up a run configuration. And the reason we need to do that is so that we can simply tell the IDE what it is that we're trying to do. So what I'll do is I'll go to my run configurations here, and I'm going to create a new PHP web page. This is going to be based off of a blog project that has a local virtual host that we can actually set up and use. So I'm going to call this eShrade, and I'm going to specify which one I want to use. I have a server set up that understands virtual hosts, understands path mappings, all that kind of stuff. Specify that there, and we're going to click on browse so we can select the file from the project. It's a Zend framework project, so all I'll do is specify the index.php file, and rather than auto-generating, I'm just going to remove all of that stuff. And the reason for this is because I want to open up a session in my browser. I don't necessarily want to have a whole bunch of mapping going on back and forth. I just want to test some stuff. So I will apply it, and then I will close. Simple enough. Because what I really want to do is not run it. What I want to do is debug it, because we're talking about debugging and working with JavaScript. So I'll click down here on my debug, and I'll go to my eShrade there, and I will click on debug. Now this brings up my web page, and if there's anybody who's a good web designer who wants to take this over for me, I'd be more than happy for you to take it. But what this does is it brings my page up here, and you see on the top I see eShrade PHP Web Page. This was the individual URL. I can click on any of these links here and basically use this as my internal browser, and anytime I do, it's going to kick off a debug session. So if you have breakpoints set, it will automatically set those up and break where you actually want them to do. But what we're looking at here is, again, JavaScript. So we've got it up and running here, but we still see that we have our browser up and running. Now, if we want to set a breakpoint somewhere, it's actually really easy to do. We need to specify the application thread here, and you look, then we do that, all of a sudden we see all of the individual JavaScript items that we have available there. So what I can then do is I'll go down here. I have one called home.js. I double click on that, and it brings up that URL, and I can set a breakpoint, which, as you can see, I've already done at an earlier time. Breakpoints are set the same way they're done in normal PHP, so I just double click on that line, and that sets the breakpoint. And if I want to test this, what I can now do is I click on this button over here, which will enable or disable the click handling mechanism. And I'll show you why that is in just a moment, why you'd want to be able to do that. So I'll disable it, and I will click on this right here, and it will automatically now start to do a debug, and I can use the same debug keys I do in PHP, F5, F6, F7, F8, all of them work. Hit F6 to step over, hit F8 to continue, application is still running, but now you see that we switched from the Flex and Zend Framework Part 1 to the for the Flash developers in my little title bar here, which is what that code was actually doing. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. You get to see, a lot of variables and things like that. You can do a lot of your JavaScript debugging. I'll let you kind of take a look at how to do that in more specific terms, but what I wanted to show you here was just kind of how to get started on that. Now, what you can also do is utilize our web browser toolkit when you're doing this. So if you go to our perspectives, and I'm going to use the web browser tools, and wait a little bit while it comes up. And we're now bringing up a whole bunch of stuff. We see now our document body. We see a whole bunch of stuff in here. We also see our request monitor. We can see all the individual requests that have come in and what the timeline is. And so we can take a look at this, and we can use this to see what's actually going on in our code. So I take this same button here, and I can start, if I do this, well, hey, look at that, debugging started immediately again. But what I can do here is go through and highlight individual points. So if I wanted to go through here, I could open up the body container, double click on an image, and I can see the individual attributes there, so I can see what my browser is actually working on. So between the web browser tools perspective and the PHP debug perspective, where you can now work with JavaScript, you've actually got some really good tools for building PHP applications using rich internet applications. And while we're at it, you see here this click for more. Well, why don't we go into our PHP code, go back to my Zend framework perspective, and let's go into the code that actually does that. And don't laugh at my controller code. This was I'm actually in the process of rewriting a lot of this stuff, so your lack of your lack of laughing would probably be beneficial or be good for my self-esteem. So we go on here, and we're going to go down to our PHP debug again, and we're going to select click for more. I click on that, and I'm now in my PHP debug, hit F8, terminated, and we see that we now have more content there. So what we've got here is a really great interaction between PHP and JavaScript, and kind of tying them all together in the PHP debug perspective and the web browser tools perspective. I think that this is going to be quite useful for people who are working with JavaScript and PHP and trying to merge the two together. So with that, thank you for listening to this really quick video here, and give zend-studio a chance. We got zend-studio 8 just came out at ZendCon last week, which is a week ago since we were at ZendCon, and try it out, give it a shot, and let me know, let Zend know how you like it and whether or not you're using it and how you'd like to see it improved in the future. So with that, take care. See you at another video sometime soon.